Hello everyone, welcome to another Tesla Club India podcast. Today we are going to discuss some recent news about Tata and Tesla and some other. So we have joining with us Garvit from our team and Priyan's experience with EVs. So hello everyone.
Hello,
Hello.
thank you for inviting.
So the first news we have is regarding cells from Tata. They have incorporated a new subsidiary named Agratas Energy. So this was in their slides, one of their earnings call. Garvit, right?
Actually, it was part of the Tata Motors investor presentation. Uh,
Right,
if you go through it, there are various sections in it. But I'm surprised to see a subsidiary of the group itself. It's unfortunately not a direct subsidiary of Tata Motors.
right. Yeah, there are many slides, but a month ago we tweeted a long thread with the relevant ones, which might be interesting to some of you. So if we see the first one, it says that Tata aspires to be at the forefront of global manufacturing industry, and that there are going to be two gigafactories, one in India and another in Europe. Both will have, they claim to have both to have renewable sources to power their gigafactories. In another one of the slide, they claim to focus on whole process of cell making, which include raw material, supply chain, repurposing, and recycling. It's slide number 3. Jens, if you can look at it, it's named key areas of play.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at it, and what I find amazing is that one of our Indian companies, not even though not directly, but somewhere um, an Indian company is making battery cell, and they've listed out how they're going to build it, what they're going to build. And the best part is that all of it is going to be powered by renewable energy. So, while we'll get into the details here, but I am just excited about this bit. So, that's where I'm coming from.
Right, so it's obviously exciting to have an Indian company doing sales in India and even outside. And one of the key things that Agratas has mentioned again and again in their slides is political de-risking. And I think everyone following EVs know what that means, right? So it's to move the supply chain away from China, basically. So Agratas has mentioned it again and again, which I found one of the another interesting part of their presentation. And moving on, they talk about supply chain, manufacturing, reuse, and recycling. They to start with, they have two of their anchor customers, which are Jaguar Land Rover and another one is Tata Motors. Both are owned by Tata groups. So they project that for Tata Motors they need 20 gigawatt hour plus, and for JLR, surprisingly they include 40 gigawatt hour plus. So what we are guessing is that the 20 gigawatt hour of Tata does not include their buses or trucks. Priyansh, what do you think?
Yeah, that would be under a different company that sells commercial vehicles. And if I'm doing just quick math, 20 gigawatt hours would mean how many, let's say, 50 kilowatt hour cars? That's like 4 lakh cars, right?
Right, something like that.
Yeah. So, and this is their annual production.
Yeah, I think it's the capacity as generally in annual.
Wow. So this is good. Like, I mean, 4 lakh EVs compared to what we see right now per month, sorry, annually is a very positive and inspiring step by Tata Motors.
Another thing they mentioned that they just don't want to cater to these vehicles. In another slide, they mentioned luxury passenger vehicle, which include Jaguar Land Rover, and in affordable vehicles, it is Tata. They include commercial vehicles, and they also include two-wheeler and three-wheelers. They want to make separate cells for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And another mentioned is energy storage solutions, which I am guessing is for Tata Power, maybe someday in future.
Yeah, even I was surprised when I saw the two-wheeler, three-wheeler slide in the deck. And I mean, I'm assuming that whenever these cell manufacturers get going, they would want to target as much as much different aspects of the EV industry as they can. I mean, batteries can be used almost everywhere. Like, I mean, in all the domains that they have listed. And India two-wheeler market and the three-wheeler market is huge as compared to, let's say, any of the like say developed markets like the US or the UK or the European market. So it totally makes sense. Like, I mean, I totally get why they're doing that.
So then they talk about their cells. The presentation include design of the cell. It is prismatic cell, a long prismatic, I would say. I'm not sure if it's developed by totally Tata or with in partnership. Wherewith, do they talk about development about self in presentation?
Yeah, actually, so they were talking about research and development at their own, expense in case.
Right.
Uh, in another article, that will be discussing what they are doing regarding their research and development and the tie-ups they have done at different educational and research institutions across the world. So that needs to be seen in our next article.
So about their prismatic cell, they claim to have they are going to sell to pack directly, not modules. Uh, and they claim best in class fast charging, flexibility in chemistry. So they are claiming that this one shape can do LFP and even NMC and maybe even others that they are going to do in future, including solid state. So in coming slide, we will see that they plan a whole lot of range from short term to long term about what type of cell develop chemistry development they are going to do. So the choice of prismatic cell is interesting for NMC. I'm not sure if there are any prismatic NMC much being used. Most are either cylindrical or pouch cells. But do we know any company using prismatic NMC?
I think the most NMCs from China are prismatic. Just just to mention, they are kind of easy to package.
Yeah, all prismatic. Outside of China, among the major automakers that we have, I don't think anyone is using prismatic NMC.
Yeah, I don't think so because we have Pana and LG Chem. Both of them do cylindrical, but LG Chem also does pouches.
And
So um,
MG uses NMC in some of the vehicles. I'm not sure if it is prismatic or not.
yeah, the older ZS was NMC. James, do you have any leads regarding that?
The sorry, leads regarding
The MG NMC for ZS, I think 2020
the
models.
previous,
Yeah, yeah, previous ones.
yeah, 44.5 kilowatt hour battery pack is definitely NMC. Prismatic or not, that I'm not sure of, but their LFP batteries are
Right.
prismatic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
The
of
new one.
course, they are prismatic. Uh,
Yeah, so I'm assuming that even the NMC batteries would be prismatic.
They are using NMC in their MG4 and even some other vehicle and they have in Western or other market. I'm not exactly sure about
But in,
cells.
but in India, I think they are getting from locally whatever they can to reduce the massive tariffs that they get when they import
I think
battery
it's
cell
they are still
components.
using Cattle LFP cells in ZS EV. In their Comet EV, I think it's from either Goshen or some other. Not sure exactly.
It's from Tata Comp, right? They mentioned quite
Tata
publicly that
Tata Tata Com
MG.
doesn't do cells right now. They just make pack. I think someone need to take a look in the cells of the Comet itself.
I think I can have an answer for that in by the time we meet next.
Okay.
So
So moving on, Tata has a slide about their short-term and long-term battery plans. Battery plans. In the short term, they talk about NMC and LFP. In the medium term, they talk about cobalt-free. I think LFPs are already cobalt-free, so they are likely talking about NMC. And they include LMFP, which is a new chemistry already developed by Cattle and some other, and they include sodium ion also. And in the long term, they talk about solid state and metal air and all the other kind of batteries. So they have very ambitious plans long term. I hope it also really comes true. You know, sodium ion, it can basically, if they can do sodium ion next to let's say 3 or 4 years, it can basically be used in all the grid storage that they want to do.
Nikhil, I think you are being quite optimistic here, wherein you are expecting sodium ion batteries to come in the next half a decade. So that's
I mean,
just my
I think
opinion, though.
Cattle is already starting their production somewhat. So it's not impossible at some level. I'm not just that they can be good for storage, not vehicles. I think some vehicle in China already is testing with sodium ion. But yeah, I mean, just talking about research and development, whatever Tata is doing. So next, they talk about their cell factory layout. They have modular lines. 6 lines can do 8 gigawatt hour, and each line can be modified to do different chemistries without much change in the equipment. They are talking about 10 or 20% equipment change. So this they are trying to be future proof in their factories also, which is a nice development to see. Then we have further things about what they are going to do, and they further state the difference in their current I-Pace and what it can be with their new batteries. They are saying that I-Pace 84 kilowatt hour battery takes about 387 liter of space, and their new battery of 120 kilowatt hour will take 342 liters of space. So that's very dramatic change. We will have to see if it really comes to fruition, because plants and manufacturing in reality is different. Uh, plants can plants are not always fulfilled, especially in case of EVs. I think next we will move to some comments from Thomas Flack. He is CEO of Agratas. It's from the same presentation. Uh, so He, he starts by saying that Tata Group has been looking at this segment for about 3 years, and it has been a project that they coded internally named Project Apollo. And in the picture we will show you, he is holding the cell also. He's saying that these are designed very smartly with the idea of how long they last, as well as this battery lasts a lot longer than the car, and it is extremely safe. So I think, Priyansh, we can say that what we have seen with Tata's Nexon EVs and even other EVs, degradation is not that of issue, right? People have driven thousands, lakhs of kilometers,
Yeah,
and with not enough degradation that people hope that it would be. So a car body will start degrading first,
correct.
then these cells will likely.
Correct. And also, when they say that, when he says that 50 kilowatt, basically 130 of these battery packs, they can push an SUV for 400 to 500 kilometers. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good, efficient car that they're looking at. I mean, at least in terms of the battery capacity that they're targeting. So, I mean, if you give me that option with 50 kilowatt or 400, 500 kilometers, I'll be more than
I
happy to
mean,
take.
it's more than
So,
most Indians
yeah,
would need. Right. I mean, in my view,
definitely, definitely.
most of the people would be good with 350-kilometer range, most of them, and then others can have different option because it's an open market and people, every company will be launching their own products. So from the thing he said that 50 kilowatt hour from about 130 of the cells. So doing rough calculation, one cells come at about 384 watt hour. And if we would have known the weight, we could have guessed its density, but we don't know that yet, right? So then next he talks about gigafactory being expensive and this is politically de-risking the supply chain and raw material. And then there's some of the supply chain they have to go locally to meet the local subsidy demands, like in Europe and US. So they are saying that some of the supply chain you can make so far as an industry in our operation in Europe, we have to make the cathode active material, and we have to make that locally in Europe to supply Europe. And in the case of India, we have to do the same thing here. So next to a gigafactory, you also have a CAM factory. Ideally, attached to a CAM factory, you have a recycling center. Hence, you get this whole system. So they are talking about a whole integrated system as much as they can at a single place, which reduces their complexity. So it's a good plan.
And it also shows forward thinking, right? I mean, you are thinking about recycling immediately, because you know that one, you can extract a lot of value right at the source. I mean, the car, like when the car is going to be dumped, or when the car is going to be scrapped, the battery will be repurposed. So there are many materials that can be used out of the battery pack and can be recycled then and there itself and just feed it back into the system. So I think this is good. This is great work
And
for
it
by
answers the lot
Agratas
of
and Tata.
FUD that landfills are going to be filled with EV batteries. Uh, Plus, they can learn a lot from existing companies and their operation, that how they have dealt with it and how they are going with all the other plants. Uh, Redwood material, they are recycling company, and they can recover something like 90 to 95% of the material. That's like a lot. And once we have batteries here, we can recycle them again and again. And as I have said enough, you cannot do that with your fuel. You import it, you burnt it, and it's gone. You have to import it again. So
That's correct. That's okay, Nikhil. I just have one question from an EV consumer point of view, right? What how does this benefit us in India? And when can the users start seeing this benefit, whatever the benefit is? So if you can just
I
tell
think
that
first
for
of
the
the
viewers
benefit
and the
is that
listeners,
we
that would be
don't
great.
have to import these material, and basically LFP production is totally in China right now. Most of, I think, even can say 99% of the LFP production is in China. And China does not have good relation with most of the, even India and even in West. So it's basically they can hold us hostage if they want to someday, and we would be stuck with whatever we have. So it's good to have things moving locally. Another thing is that people expect prices to decrease as things are local, but I would say that the price decreasing will take time, as these things are not easy on the capital for a company, and they will have many learnings as they start the production. It's not going to be definitely easy. So long term, there will be lots of benefit. Short term, it will be to move the supply chain and the raw material processing in our country as soon as possible, as it takes a long time to do so.
Understood. So more like, yeah, so it's a long shot. The EV consumers or the potential EV consumers in India have to be patient,
I
and
mean, if you are a
hopefully,
EV consumer, yeah, you are right now not going to notice anything. You get the Goshen cell or you get the Tata cell. Basically, it will depend on what price you are paying for what range. Uh, it's just that if there's a come a cell which is more technically advanced, obviously it's going to be pricey at starting. So it's a long term they will benefit. Short term, don't expect to have your car prices halved. Yes, that's what I would say.
okay. Just one more digression from this. Tata already does three-wheelers and Tata
Right.
does commercial vehicles. The Tata Ace is electric, and they are planning to use the batteries there too, right? So, I mean, that is like, do you see that market? Like, do you see them getting the batteries first, or do you see the consumers getting the battery first, or do you think the JLR cars will be getting the battery first? Like, where will be the first fruits?
So
Like, who will enjoy
JLR
them
factory will be
first? Like, that's my
separate in
question.
UK, so it's not related to whatever is happening in India. India factory will be different. The factory in Europe will be NMC. They will be doing NMC initially. The factory in India will be doing LFP initially. They will do NMC later too. And from as they said, their anchor customer are Tata Motors and JLR. So I think the first Agratas batteries will be in Tata passenger vehicles rather than commercial vehicles. And regarding to time, they didn't provide much, but I would say minimum of 2.5 years before we start seeing something. They signed a MOU with the government of Gujarat, so that's where their factory is going to be in India. But we do,
So this also means that by the time, like, this will coincide with the time when Tata is launching their Gen 3 cars,
but
which
with
is
Gen 2,
basically Curve or Avitna, right? They're all Gen 3.
Avin, I think,
Okay, sorry, the
yeah,
Avigna.
that's
Avigna
Gen.
was Gen
I'm
3,
not
I
sure
think.
if they will make that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, because it makes sense, right? You have a completely built up model and you have, like, I mean, if the timeline matches, then you
I
have
think I
battery
think they
packs
would
also
use
coming in
earlier if
from
they
Tata.
can
So
make it.
you can
But yeah,
vertically
you are
integrate.
right about timeline coinciding with their Gen 3 versions. So yeah, moving on. We say that this cell is for vehicles only, passenger vehicles basically. He says that the cell that drives a bus is not that cell. It is not ideal. It is not optimized. It is wrong chemistry. So, bus are heavy vehicles. LFP increases the weight. So maybe NMC or LMFP. And he says that it is a wrong format size. I am not sure why he says that prismatic is wrong for buses, but it's fine for heavy JLR vehicles. But I would love if they can explain more.
I think he
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah, wrong
size,
format
not
size.
shape. Wrong format size. So I think he might be trying to enlarge it just in case to provide, a good distribution of uh, energy within the cell itself. Although we have seen the
Yeah,
longest
dividing weight.
prismatic that is actually a blade right now, but
It's basically prismatic.
it's a prismatic,
Yeah.
na? It's no different. Yeah. So what I'm seeing is they are trying to do something like maybe a long blade shaped structure or something like that, just in case to avoid, more number of cells in the bus for a capacity of, let's say, 200 kilowatt hour.
Then he again talk about de-risking India from any import of critical battery material. And they said that with a little bit more work on the sodium ion solution, potentially not just for energy solution, but also potentially in buses. So they aim to have sodium ion someday in buses. We'll see if it happens. We also said that we are naturally placed to work with two-wheeler and three-wheeler. For us, these are extension of what we are already doing. There's a different format that's ideal for those sectors, so it is a cylindrical format. You can't fit much of a long prismatic in small two-wheelers. Three-wheeler, yep, maybe, but two-wheelers are most of the two-wheelers are cylindrical, right? In India, every good performance one is using 2170 shape, and the cheapest ones I don't know what they have from whatever they import from China. Yeah, but just a different shape of LFP cylindrical. Right? So what from we know from this is that Tata is going to work on multiple shapes of cells, not just the prismatic they have shown right now. They want to cater to as many categories as they can. They want to work on every possible chemistry they can. It's a very ambitious and it's a long-term plan. We shouldn't expect that all these to happen within next 2 years or so.
I think they're going to use this as an experimental base, and that is why they have kept everything open because I mean it's factory 101, right? The factory will be
Right.
most efficient when it is just make churning out one product one after the other. So I mean we can consider this as a big lab slash production facility wherein they're going to try
Yeah,
out
right.
many different things and see what sticks. So
So he further
I think
states
that's
that the
great.
same cell will have one chemistry in India, actually two, but one initially, and a completely different chemistry delivering much more power and energy for JLR. The same cell gives us the flexibility to make it. So he's talking about NMC for JLR and LFP for India initially. So he further tells us that they have a lab in UK where they have been working from past 3 plus years. So it's not a sudden development. We can tell that 3 plus year is a good enough time to start having idea about the cells and chemistries. And they want to do collaboration with multiple institutions and universities and the other labs there worldwide, not just India. To name some of them, they want to University of Cambridge, Dalhousie University. I think Tesla has partnership with that. Faraday Institute, University of Oxford, University of Tokyo, University of Texas, National Renewable Energy Lab, and much more. You can read them on the slides.
Okay, before we move on to the next, we may have covered this earlier too, but just as a consumer, right? Why why do we have two different chemistries, and why does JLR think that okay, NMC will be better for JLR, but for India or for Tata Motors we should use LFP? Like, what do you
Right.
think? If you can just
So
describe that in a couple
each
of
cell
minutes, that
has,
would be great.
each chemistry has their different properties. NMC one, they deliver more energy. They have higher density than LFP ones. They can do higher fast charging than LFP ones. But they are more affected by regular fast charging or let's say charging to 100% daily.
I mean, these are exactly the things that even an Indian consumer would want, except that last bit. But despite that, like we would want a higher density, we would want higher power. So then,
But
then why?
for the general vehicles that in India we have, LFP is sufficient for them. It is sufficient for the fast charging infrastructure that we have. It is sufficient for the range that we have, and it is sufficient for the price we have. LFP are less pricier than an MC1, so price also plays a factor.
Okay, so if price plays a big role, then yeah, I mean, all our arguments can go back in the box because price is the
No,
king.
I mean
So
if you see, if the Nexon was an MC, you set a limit of daily 80% or 90% charging because it is not recommended to do 100% on NMC. In the same capacity pack on LFP, you can do 100% daily.
yeah, 25%
So
more. Yeah.
your driving range is essentially more in daily scenario with LFPs, and you are being less affected by degradation in long term. So that's one of another concern reduced. And LFP,
So NMC degrades faster, is what you're trying to say.
NMC degradation is more, slightly more than the LFP ones. Yeah, it's a rough. It's
Understood.
yeah.
Assuming everything else is the same.
I would
Understood.
like to add one more point here. Sorry, Nikhil. Just want to add one more point here. NMC, for NMC, you need to have a very critical
Yeah.
thermal management system. Otherwise, you are playing with fire.
Literally or
Have,
figuratively?
it all depends on BMS and the logic they have built upon the vehicle control system. So, of course, software plays a role, but you need to have a very stringent thermal management system in case of NMCs.
Citron has LFP and it doesn't have any cooling. It's अपने आप cool हो जाएगी.
It is air cooled, so if that matters. Yeah. So no, so in India right now, one of the mass market products that we have in NMC is definitely the Mahindra XUV 400. So so I mean, if what you're trying to say is that if they don't charge their car to 100% regularly, then they don't have to worry that much, the Mahindra XUV owners, right?
No, no, they have to. NMC one are not recommended to be charged fully.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, that if they don't charge it to 100% regularly, then they don't have much to worry about. But if they do, then yeah, they
So,
may
a
notice
best
degradation
example I would
faster.
give of Tesla. In their
All right.
NMC, once they have limit points on their app, which show 70, 80, 90%, you can move to anything, but they have limit point mentioned. And but in their LFP one, you have they just don't have that thing. You can just go full on and don't worry about anything. Uh, and another thing, another reason for this is that LFP vehicles require calibration kind of regularly, BMS calibration, and which happens above 98, 99% in some vehicle, or maybe 95% in some vehicles. So that's another reason why LFPs are recommended to be charged 100%. But I would mention here that try to do so at home and not on a public charger. On a public charger, just charge as much as you need. So moving on, he says that making of three of these cells, it's about one little bit over 1 kilowatt hour, takes 45 kilowatt hour of energy. He explains why they want to go renewable, because making cells is not an is energy, it is an energy extensive project, right? And he says that making 1 kilowatt hour of CAM takes 35 hour of energy. But the cell is good for over 2000 cycles, so the use of the energy that is used to make this cell is very good. That's why they are focusing on renewable energy for their factories. And they have partnered with government. They have signed MOU with Gujarat, uh, and they are going to do some of the renewable themselves also.
Correct. So that's, yeah, I mean, 45 kilowatt hour to make 1 kilowatt hour is which will last for 2000 cycles. That's barely any consumption. That's like 22 watt hour uh, per kilowatt hour.
and
So
and it's not going to be unusable at 2000 cycles.
exactly,
It
exactly.
still will still have use.
Yeah. So let's say that at 2000 cycles, consumed, it has seen more than half of its life cycle. Yeah,
90% I won't say at 2000, but maybe with these new sets, but let's just say to 75 or 80, right? Let's not be too optimistic with 90%. Just give a rough idea.
so today is 19 July when we're recording this. And I don't know if you guys saw, but um, these guys, Exponent Energy,
Yeah.
they they released, like, they for basically someone who doesn't know who Exponent is, so they make battery packs, and they charge their batteries in 15 minutes. And their typical battery size, like, I mean, battery in three-wheelers will give a range of 70 to 75 kilometers,
Yes,
right?
they
A
have
small
something
battery pack.
8 kilowatt hour battery pack, and they charge at 4C rate.
Correct. 4C, which is great. I mean, your regular car, be it your
Quite a,
Nexon, or
yeah,
be it your MG,
yeah.
or be it your Tiago or Tigor, they will charge at around 1C, like some 0.8C, some at 1.2. Yeah. Yeah. So 4C is amazing, like almost four times faster. So they came
Yeah,
out
I
with a
think
report saying that when
they they
um
they say that at about 3000 cycle they are noticing or something like 11% degradation.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So my point was that, yeah, so 3000 cycles, 11% degradation. So when we are talking about 2000 cycles, that's hardly anything, right? I mean, that's you still have like 50% more to go. Um,
Right.
if we can compare the
Right.
two.
I mean, even if I'm saying that, let's just not be too hopeful. Let's just say it's about 75 or even 80%. If you are getting about 300-kilometer range today, you are still going to get what, 240-kilometer range, right? And
Exactly.
what is 2000 cycles? 2000, let's say you are getting a range of about 300. You have driven about 6 lakh kilometer. After 6 lakh kilometer, you are still getting 240-kilometer range. So the vehicle is still very much usable.
Correct. And
Yeah.
hardly, like, Indians, as Indians, we don't like to drive that much. Except obviously there are fringe cases of, cases on the edge, but most of the population does not drive that much. So
So I mean, these concerns of degradation, battery changing every few years, these are way overblown. And I would mention another point that these vehicles come with 8-year battery warranty. Your typical ICE has 3 year, maybe 4. And the ICE engine doesn't go bad after 3 year. Your battery is not going bad
Correct.
after 8 year. I don't know why people think that the warranty end of warranty means end of battery life. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one way to get rid of that is uh, by the manufacturers just giving the warranty in terms of kilometers or some extremely high number like 40 years, which is I mean that will definitely take away the
I
health.
mean, they do give in kilometer something like 1.6 lakh
Correct. I
kilometer.
mean,
So the kilometer
but
now.
people instead of focusing on that 1.6 lakh or even 5 lakh kilometers, they'll focus on the number of years because it's easier to think that way instead of imagining 1.6 lakh kilometers. So
I mean, people are fine with their electronics having 1 year warranty. Do they think that after 1 year they are going to buy a new TV or fridge?
no, but I mean the expense is also different, right? When you're buying an electric car, you're spending at least 10 lakh rupees, and when you're buying a phone or a fridge or a TV, that
But
is
it's
all
it's
around
a
sub
matter
1
of
lakh rupees, right?
education as well.
So
Can't blame people
that's the
also.
whole ball
Yeah.
game.
And I don't think manufacturers are doing enough education, as you can tell with your experience with Tata service.
Definitely, yeah.
Their Tata dealership are not exactly doing the job that they should. That's one area they should focus on.
Just one more point on that last point, right? When people say that you have to replace the battery, what I've started doing is that I've started asking them, okay, tell me your odometer right now, and how much time has it been since you've bought the car? Half of them don't know what their odometer readings are. And uh, yeah, they definitely remember, okay, they bought this car like 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. But odometer, they'll always give you an estimate that, it must be between, say, 50 to 60,000 kilometers or something like that. So, yeah, people don't get, it's not easy to imagine 1.6 lakh kilometers versus 8 years. So that's the
Related
whole
to
thing.
Tata, it's a today's news. Tata has announced that they are going to do their Europe factory in UK. They are going back and forth with multiple countries there, so they have finally decided on UK being their first gigafactory outside of India. 40 gigawatt hour and 4 billion euro investment. They are saying that Tata states that they have expanded the supply contract and introduced an additional cell and pack supplier for their Gen 2 vehicles. Right now, every Tata EV has cylindrical cells, LFP from Goshen. They are talking about additional cell and pack supplier. So I'm assuming it's LFP, right? Tata LFP. So it narrows down the list of what this new supplier might be. And I don't think it's Agratas because it has already been mentioned, and we sh- we won't see Agratas in next year. Their Gen 2 vehicle, I think Curve is supposed to launch next year. So not that. It might be Cattle, it might be BYD. We don't know. Yes, Volt is also an option, but it's just an interesting development we noticed today. And someone has replied that can't they import the blade battery? Oh man, it's way the blade battery has been hyped way too much in India. It's good, but there are so many other options, and blade is basically LFP also. And I would say that BYD doesn't do a great job in its charging also. Maybe something like 2C mostly. And their at Atto 3 peak is what 88 kilowatt for their 60 kilowatt hour pack. So what is that? Yeah, so it's about 1.1.5 C. So blade is good, but people should stop mentioning blade everywhere, especially in India. Right?
Yeah, the biggest reason for that is because their presentation about how blade batteries are has been good. People trust that, okay, BYD is a company that is, one of the biggest car manufacturers, and they were into this whole batteries business and cell phone now they are manufacturing electric vehicles. So they come from a lot of baggage of trust, which people tend
I
to.
don't think these people even saw the BYD presentation. Most of them. Yeah, they just likely heard from the news and some of the YouTube
Okay,
videos there are, and many of them think that blade nothing is better than the blade. Obviously not true. It's good, it's very good, but they have been, as we mentioned earlier, some issues. There are many other batteries. It's basically a LFP, and they have given it a name blade. It's a prismatic shape also. Okay. Next one is epsilon related. Garvit, can you do this one?
So Epsilon Advanced Material is a subsidiary of Epsilon Carbon, and it has been involved in manufacturing of anode materials for the lithium cells. We have recently seen they've signed some MOU with the government of Karnataka for the establishment of factories, anode factories to be fair. They are talking about producing synthetic anodes or synthetic anode materials to be frank. Now the news comes as that they are planning a $650 million anode facility in the US market. This was announced during the PM's visit. We found out through the White House News Center, and it mentions that it will have a capacity of 50,000 tons per annum, which is enough to power a million vehicles or so. Not a huge investment, but I think it wants to cater to as many as OEMs as possible.
okay. Quick new question. These anodes and cathodes that they're talking about, like we discussed CAM, right? So is it similar to CAM earlier in case of Agratas, or is it different?
For any battery to function, there should be a source and a sink of electron. So these electrons flow due to some electrochemical processes. By the
Correct,
movement of ions, we usually mean the current is
correct,
flowing. Now, this anode and cathode reacts as a source and a sink at different times.
correct.
When charging, someone is the source, other one is the sink, and when discharging, their their role changes. So both are different things. The anode is usually made up of graphite in most chemistries,
Yeah,
but cathode, as usually we say that we are talking about LFP, NMC, NCA. So here we are mentioning about the cathode material, not anode. Anode is mostly graphite or carbon-related derivatives.
understood. Okay, and when you say synthetic material, that means that is it like basically what I'm trying to understand is they are going to manufacture these many anodes and cathodes, but does it depend on the battery cell, battery type, battery chemistry, or anyone can pick up any anode and cathode in the market and when they're making the cell, they can use them and their batteries will work? Or is it some kind of specialization that is needed or customization? If you can just highlight on that.
No, even a small change can change the specs of the cell very much. It, it has to be catered to the cell, whatever you are doing, trying to do.
So what I'm trying to understand is that when let's say a company, an OEM or a battery pack assembler or a battery pack manufacturer, when they place an order with them, is it going to be a custom order or is it going to be like, okay, hey, you have this much quantity, I'll just pick it up from you?
No. It's not all like something like off the shelf. You
Okay,
have to do some R&D with them.
understood.
Decide a purity factor and do some research on how you can actually integrate the whole supply.
If
Correct,
you are going to buy directly, you have to buy whatever is available. So cannot just go make and demand that we need this small change. They are not going to do so.
Of course, the scale should be there,
no,
but of course you can't put a generic anode in any cell. It will of course degrade the class of the cell. For example, you might be making a class 1 or class A cell, and if you put a random anode, then definitely you are going to compromise the quality, and hence you may turn up maybe using a disposable.
it would require change in BMS and whole pack management also. It's not that simple.
Also, when OEMs are placing an order, they're obviously not placing an order for small quantities. They are going to place order for, like, if not tens of thousands, at least tens of lakhs of quantities of, like, for those many cars, right?
First.
I mean, so at least 1 lakh cars or at least 5 lakh cars. So that will probably amount into a decent amount of quantity. So, all right.
And we need to know the exact business case of each cell company, how they are operating to go into much detail like that.
Understood. I think that we can reserve for the next podcast or for any of the upcoming podcast, not next podcast. But yeah, I think
No,
we,
just to give a small example, like Tesla makes the big deals, so they can go and tell them that do things slightly different, so they will. But if a small company is going to, let's say, two-wheeler manufacturer needs some quantity of cell, I don't think they are going to do that. You have just to buy whatever their general production is, whatever different type of cells they are doing.
understood.
It's not our area of expertise to say to comment on these things deeply. Okay, now let's move on to what our club name is, Tesla Club India. Now talking about some Tesla news.
Please.
Uh, last month, CEO Elon met with Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New York, I think. So they say that Tesla will invest in India, but they don't want to jump the gun on announcement. And he is going to visit India next year. That's a new thing. Apart from that, he says that Prime Minister is pushing them to do more of the things in India, make significant investment in India, and they intend to do so. He says that we are also looking forward to bring Starlink in India.
And
So
I think we did see some movement after the visit about at least Starlink, right? And then once we can finish Starlink, then we can come to Tesla.
we did see movement about Tesla and as well as Starlink. Uh,
Hmm.
but to, so
What
okay,
happened?
let's
Yeah.
finish the Starlink first. So basically, Starlink has applied to uh, get clearance to establish ground stations in India.
Okay. And can you explain Starlink to someone who's listening to this podcast for the first time?
So Starlink is basically internet service provider, satellite internet service provider. Uh, don't need your regular cell tower or fiber. They can do direct internet from their satellite also, but most countries require a ground station within the country so that things can be managed a bit more. If it's directly from satellite, you can't do much of the management. Every information will flow. So a ground station
Correct.
basically passes, it takes the data from satellite and passes it to you. That's what ground station will be doing. So it's basically a movement forward for Starlink that they are doing finally for going through approvals to get things started in India.
So that's good news. But I mean, obviously, with Twitter and Starlink, I think, yeah, the it all depends on how much the government will be in power, because we have general elections next year, and when governments, if they do change, then a lot of things change in the whole system, right? So if we can get Starlink before 24, I think that's great. Otherwise, we may have to wait for a few years.
Maybe generally election guideline may prevent some approval at those time or something like that. Not sure exactly on that. But Starlink has been trying from something like 2 years at this point, 1.5 year at least. It's good to see them moving forward. Even Philippines and other countries are getting it even before India. Same is the case with Tesla. Tesla is in Malaysia and Indonesia, and it is not in India yet.
Yeah, I read a tweet by Tesla Malaysia that they got some 10,000 bookings for Model Y
In
in four
four
days.
in 4 days, and
Wow,
and
that's
they
crazy.
and they will have their opening ceremony tomorrow. But their first supercharger is already constructed.
Of course, that's the Tesla way of doing things, I guess.
Now we will look at what development we have with respect to Tesla and why I think that it would have been better if it was earlier and why it would have benefited our country. First report we
Please,
have
the
it
floor
is
is
from Economic Times. State that Tesla is planning a 500,000 annual factory in India, that is 5 lakhs, and the price point might be something around 20 lakh. So I think it is their next gen model they are planning. Giga Mexico is also supposed to do that. So Elon did stated that they will do one more factory along with Giga Mexico, and they will make the decision on that by end of this year. So if it can be India, I'm more than happy, you know. And as we have said, India can be an export base. The Economic Time also mentioned that Tesla has come to us with an ambitious plan, and we are confident with the movement will be positive this time, especially as it involves both local manufacturing and exports, a source says. It's good to know that they are finally doing some solid talks with the government on local production. As we know, India has very high import duty, so Tesla has been reluctant to come here till now. And they have had enough demand in other countries to make in India a focus. But India is a future, it is most populous country, so they cannot ignore it for too long.
correct. And no, you were saying, right, that why is this like, I mean, why this could have happened earlier and why is it happening now and why is it like, are we in a bad situation? Have we already lost the boat or are we like, we still have enough time to catch up in terms of Tesla making in India?
I think Tesla factory in India is a given, it's a question of when. No, they cannot have no factory in the largest populous country in the world. They couldn't do earlier because Tesla is in a much more strong position right now, and they are doing making vehicles in millions, and they have their best selling model as Model Y in the world. Things are moving forward, and they have a very ambitious plans. They want to do 20 million annual sales by 2030. So they have to move very fast, and we want it shouldn't be a surprise if we start seeing multiple Tesla gigafactories in many countries at around same time. So I think India is a part of that long-term plan, and I hope they are focusing on energy storage also. It's going to be a very big market in some country like India, which needs grid strengthening, residential storage, and much more.
So I think we can say that Tesla has been busy making Model Y one of the best selling cars, the best selling car
Yes.
globally. So yeah, I mean, the next generation of cars should be focused. The cheaper generation of cars should be focused around what the Indian consumer demands because probably that is where they will expect uh, a huge jump in sales.
Not not
And 20
not
lakh
just
price point
India, multiple
is
countries. Then and obviously we need to,
correct. So the biggest of all will be yeah.
India is obviously with regard to population.
And the $20 lakh rupee price point is also um, not outside of reach of the people who own a car, right?
I mean,
I
I
mean,
mean,
even your
if you
cheapest,
can pay 15
yeah,
lakh, so obviously people will pay 20 lakh for a Tesla. Tesla has a different hype. We used to say that people will stretch their budgets for Tesla.
correct. One more question from my side. So we've seen whenever, like, I mean, when Tesla started, right? It started with the Roadster. It started with extremely high-end vehicles. So, and given that they were actually just starting out and didn't have any experience as such in building factories and building cars, so when when we expect Tesla to come in India, do we expect them to also come up with their high-priced cars, or do you think they'll directly launch the new generation
No, I think
here?
obviously the first cars are going to be Model 3 and Model Y. because making a factory will take time. They are in development mode right now, so they can maybe they will import or maybe
Oh,
they will assemble it. I don't know, but it makes sense to do Model 3 and Model Y initially, sell them because they are ready vehicles and obviously selling all around the world. And there will be huge demand of them also. As we have seen in Malaysia, 10,000 in 4 days. I think we will. I don't want to make any guess because we don't have much idea on how it will do, but it should do good in India to Model 3 and Model Y. So what they offer at the price is and compared to what other internal combustion engine luxury vehicles that we have. I just like to make this point that Tesla does not make right-hand drive Model S and X, so we won't be getting those sadly. So Tesla basically says that RSD demand for S and X is too low for them to continue making them. Maybe we will see in future, but not anytime soon. It's useless to talk about, I think. So
okay, let's move on to
second
the
Tesla news
good.
is
Yeah.
Tesla has held talks with regard to supply chain in India. So basically, Tesla has held talks with government and industry lobby with regard to supply chain. Both want Tesla to have local suppliers, uh, partner with local Indian suppliers that we have. But Tesla is interested in bringing their own supplier also, apart from whatever they will do locally. The reason could be that the Indian local supplier might not be making those products such right now, or that Tesla has established very good relations with their suppliers and they can replicate the production very quickly compared to the local suppliers. So it was basically about that. So, but it gives us a sense that Tesla is not going to do some just assembly because even if you see the scale 5 lakh per annum, which company in India has come and said that on first day we are going to make a factory of 5 lakh per annum?
No, even like as we discussed now, right? Tata too says that when they're setting up the battery manufacturing, they're setting up for 4
Or
lakh cars a
it's
year.
it's not a
Uh,
sudden. It will be over the years ramp up.
Correct. With the way Tesla works, I think they scale fast. So that's good. Like, I mean,
So Tesla doesn't do assembly anywhere right now. They do production. They do scale. They work on scale. They live on scale. So that's what I always said that that's what would be the benefit of having Tesla in India because they will work on scale. They will do things locally. Start doing things locally. And as it is evident, they are talking about supply chain already. Regarding to supply chain, we have another news. Tesla has asked its battery supplier to be in conversation with India regarding to battery manufacturing in India. And Panasonic has met with Indian government to discuss the same. This is just another indication of how Tesla operates with regards to what generally people think that Tesla would have operated. That they will just do and come and sell a few cars here and it would be done deal. So as we can see, if Tesla comes here, they will be bringing a whole ecosystem with them. They will be pushing the local ecosystem with them. That's why I always said that it makes sense to do temporary relief on import duties for all EVs, not just Tesla, all EVs, maybe for 2, 3 years. And I think if we would have done it 2 or 3 years ago, maybe we would have a Tesla Gigafactory in construction right now.
I think if you compare this with how Apple is manufacturing in India, like Apple was like, okay, I need to get Foxconn. And for them, I think it was okay because India did not have any kind of uh, mobile phone manufacturing systems or chip suppliers, chip manufacturers. But when Tesla says this, maybe the government is also thinking that okay, we already have a well flourishing existing auto industry, uh, also an auto EV industry. So maybe that's why the government is less hesitant on getting Tesla plus suppliers. Instead, they just
I
want
mean,
Tesla.
government can't
So
basically stop companies from coming here, can't say no to suppliers that no, don't here. If Tesla wants them to bring here, they will come.
definitely.
Just saying generally that Tesla pushes the ecosystem wherever they go locally because they want to do things in as less price as possible, and the best way to do is to do things locally. I mean, obviously they will partner with local if and everything will be based on price. Many of the Tesla suppliers in India right now, and even if they are bringing suppliers from outside, they will be doing that in India, not outside. They are just bringing the company from outside. Really employing people locally, they will be doing things locally.
Uh,
Obviously,
Basically,
Tesla, I think they still do have some supply chain from India. I'm not sure what products they actually take outside from India, but they do still have something going on. So it was. So these are just right now discussion. Don't expect anything to happen in a at least for next few months. Maybe by end of this year we will see something. But it's just exciting to see that finally, after a long, long wait, things are happening, and Elon will be visiting India next year as well. Priyansh, do you have anything else to discuss today?
No, I think we have covered almost all our news articles. Garvit, if you have left anything, just we'll
I think
quickly cap it
we have
up.
discussed quite a lot today, although Nikhil has taken the lead this time.
I mean, we can go on much, much more, but I think today is already long enough, and the next topic we want to discuss will be very long, right, Priyansh? Okay, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to. And you can follow us on Twitter, and our handles will be mentioned in the description. Thank you so much. Catch you on the next one. Bye bye.